Hello everyone, to my dear fellow Mitpalalim at the Bet Garden community. Once again, unfortunately, I won't be with you for Shabbos, and therefore I'm recording this Dvar Torah for Shabbos morning, the Dvar Halacha, which will deal with a very simple issue. Today is Daled Iyar, and tomorrow will be Hey Iyar, the actual calendar date of Yom Haatzmaut. And the question I'm going to deal with is there any significance to that date at all? Or, quite frankly, we made Yom Haatzmaut 2 days early. It's a beautiful Kiddush Hashem for the state of Israel that we do that in order to prevent any violations of Shabbos. The question is there any significance to Hey Iyar halachically, since we made Yom Haatzmaut 2 days early? We have, as everybody knows, an ironclad rule when it comes to biblical dates. Whenever it comes out, we celebrate them. However, when it comes to rabbinic dates, we have not one, not two, but three precedents in which we do, quote unquote, play around with the date, simply because of good reasons. So let's go through them and see what the Gdolei HaPoskim said about pushing the date around. Does the real date stand, or does it have no significance once you get to it? So let's begin with the first precedent, and that is Purim, that comes out on Shabbos. We had it this year, called a Purim Meshulash. Indeed, the residents of Yerushalayim had to split up their Purim into 3 days, and the question is it significant, say, to the Friday prior, when the residents of Yerushalayim read the Megillah? According to the Mishnah Brura, it's considered an early Purim, and therefore you need a minyan in order to read the Megillah, as you do anytime you read the Megillah early. However, it seems like the overwhelming majority of poskim disagreed, and they said if the rabbis pushed it back to Friday, then that is the real date. In the words of Rashi, Ho'il v'tiknu lahem chachmei Yisrael, because the rabbis of Israel, Shachar Knesset Agdola, La'agdim Mishum de Rabbah, because of Rabbah's very, very known suspicion that people would carry the Megillah on Shabbos in a place without an Eruv in a forbidden way, then it becomes the date. There's no other date outside of that date. Namely, Friday is the date for Yerushalayim, lechol dvarav, in every which way. And even though it's a day early, it's considered the right day. From this perspective, it seems like Gdolei HaPoskim indeed poskin that way, because if indeed it was considered a Kriyah Shelo Bizmanan, namely an early reading, then you would need a minyan, and therefore all the women's Megillah readings for women would be out. I didn't see anyone put out such a pamphlet this year, and therefore I think Am Yisrael poskin, like Rashi, against the Mishnah Brura on this, as did the Chazon Ish and others, that indeed when Purim is a Shabbos in Yerushalayim and they push Megillah reading to Friday, that is considered its time. And therefore I think that if Yom Haatzmaut was pushed back, according to this, that is considered the right day. And therefore Shabbos has no significance from the precedent of Purim. The second precedent we have is not a happy holiday, but rather Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the year. If it comes out on Shabbos, we push the fast to Sunday. Is there any significance to Shabbos? So the Shulchan Aruch indeed says that because he's a Sephardi, and by Sephardim there's no 9 days, there's only Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, he has to establish which is the week in which Tisha B'Av falls out. Is it the whole entire week, because Tisha B'Av is that Shabbos, or is it nothing, because we actually fast on Sunday, Yud B'Av? And he brings both opinions. He doesn't decide on this. But later on, it seems like he does make a decision on this, and that is, what do you do on that Shabbos? On that Shabbos, namely, it's Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av on the calendar, that on that Shabbos, Mutar bekulan, you're allowed to do everything. You're allowed to do every Shabbos. Afilu betashmi shamita, one of the prohibitions of Tisha B'Av, is consistent point of view, and I believe it's based on the Rashba that says, and I quote, She'ein noheg bo shum avilut. There is no mourning on Shabbos. De legamrei akrua michi'i. The rabbis totally took it out of the 9th and moved it to the 10th. However, the Ramah disagrees. The Ramah does say that if Tisha B'Av on the calendar comes out on Shabbos, then indeed publicly it's a regular Shabbos, but privately, he says, yesh osrim tashmi shamita v'chein nohagin, marital relations would be forbidden. And indeed the Ramah is consistent with this point of view, because later on he says that since he says us Ashkenazim have a minhag not to learn Torah from Erev Tisha B'Av, on the things that we're not allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, namely we limit our Torah learning only to those things that we are allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, says the Ramah, that if it comes out on Shabbos, and Omrim Bar Pirkei Avot, people that learn Pirkei Avot every week on every Shabbos afternoon cannot learn it on that Shabbos. So there we have a machlokes, just like we did with regard to the early Megillah reading of Purim in Yerushalayim. If indeed Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos and is pushed to Sunday, is there any significance to it that Shabbos or not? The Shulchan Aruch says no significance, it's totally Sunday, and the Ramah says yes, there is. And the third precedent is Tzom Gedalia. There is a school of thought that said Gedalia was killed on the 3rd of Tishrei, which is the date that we usually fast. However, Rak says that he was killed on Rosh Hashanah, the Kavua Ta'anit b'motzei Rosh Hashanah b'pnei shehu Yom Tov. But they made the fast the day after because Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov. The Ibn Ezra says Nehera Gedalia b'Rosh Hashanah al ken kva'ua b'Yom HaShlishi. Even though he was killed on Rosh Hashanah, you can't fast on a Yom Tov. Therefore, they pushed it to the 3rd of Tishrei, which is the day we fast. The Taz on the Shulchan Aruch brings in the name of the Beis Yosef, who brings in the name of Rabbeinu Yerucham, that Gedalia indeed was not killed on the 3rd of Tishrei, but on Rosh Hashanah itself. And therefore, we pushed it off to the day after Rosh Hashanah. Is this considered Ta'anit Bizmano or not? Is it considered the day or not? After all, if it's a Ta'anit Nitche, if it's a pushed off fast day, then there's many more kulas. Indeed, Rabbi Akiva Eger says that if a Tisha B'Av is pushed to Sunday, it's considered a Nitche, and many more people could go ahead and eat than usual. So the question is every single year Tzom Gedalia considered a Nitche or not? Because if he was killed on Rosh Hashanah, by default every year it's a Nitche. So he brings 2 points of view. One point of view is, yes, it's considered a Nitche, and therefore there's a Bris Milah on Tzom Gedalia every year, not just when it falls out on Shabbos and we push it to Sunday. Says the Taz, there is a school of thought that says that the Baal HaBrit, the father, the Mohel, as well as the Sandik can eat. But then he says, V'yesh omrim deshani, some say different, the Tzom Gedalia, the Bepama Rishonah decha'u, v'kasru li tanot b'yom gimel le'olam. Tzom Gedalia is not a nitche per se. It's every year a nitche. Namely, it's not once in a while it comes out on a Shabbos. It's every year, not on Rosh Hashanah. If he was killed on Rosh Hashanah, then every year by definition, it's on the day after Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, it's not considered a nitche. And therefore, chalak zera le'olam b'shaveh. It's always on the same day. It's always a day later. And therefore, we don't even feel that it's considered a day later, because every year, the day after Rosh Hashanah is the day we fast, except if the day after Rosh Hashanah is Shabbos. From this perspective, looking at these 3 precedents, I believe that indeed, based on what Am Yisrael paskins on the question of Tisha B'Av on Shabbos, on the question of Tzom Gedalia, and on the question of the early Purim Megillah reading in Yerushalayim, that this year, Yom Haatzmaut was on Thursday yesterday. That's when people had parties, barbecues, shaved, did everything that they usually do on Yom Haatzmaut. And therefore, there is no real significance to Hey Iyar this Shabbos. It would be a regular Shabbos for all states and purposes, with one little caveat. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach paskins that when Purim is a 3-day Purim in Yerushalayim, then even outside of Yerushalayim, on the Sunday, which is Tet Zayin Adar, it's not Purim in Yerushalayim, which is Tet Vav, it's not Purim outside Yerushalayim, which is Yudalit, it's the day in Yerushalayim that they give Shalach Manas and they eat the Seudah. He says you don't say Tachanu. So on that level, I believe that since it's Hey Iyar this Shabbos, then shuls shouldn't say Tzidkat Chatzedek at Mincha. Regarding Av HaRachamim, we are in the month when Av HaRachamim was instituted because of the Crusades, and therefore I think the minhag is to say it just like we did in Shabbos Bevarchim Chodesh Iyar a week ago. So out of reference to the Ramah that thinks that if Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, there is some significance to it, and out of reverence to the point of view of the Mishnah Berurah that says that when Purim falls out in Yerushalayim, then we push Megillah reading to Fridays, but it's considered Shelo Bizmana. And out of reverence of the point of view brought in the Taz that he doesn't like, that Tzom Gedalia is considered a nitche because he was really killed on Rosh Hashanah, I think that we can skip Tzidkatcha, we skip Tachanun. For many, many reasons, we can skip it this week too. But outside of that, I think it's beautiful that indeed the state of Israel said, we will celebrate our independence, but not, God forbid, with any chashash of Chilul Shabbos. May it be God's will that indeed, just like God gave us this beautiful binyan of Israel, we will be able to lahashlim ze habinyan and emirtza Hashem see the geula shalema after we saw the atchalta the geula b'mheira b'yameinu.
השלם השלם זה הבניין בורא עולם בקניין השלם השלם זה הבניין בורא עולם בקניין בורא עולם בקניין השלם זה הבניין